ESPN just dropped Nick Chubb's name next to the Dallas Cowboys, and the internet is going absolutely wild right now. But before we dive into whether this move actually makes any sense for America's team, you need to hit that subscribe button because we are grinding every single day to bring you Cowboys news the moment it breaks. And honestly, we're not getting nearly enough of you locked in, so do me a favor, smash that subscribe button right now because we cover every roster move, every rumor, every bit of drama surrounding this team. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming this offseason. All right, so here's the deal. Matt Bowen over at ESPN just published his annual piece about the best remaining free agents and where they should land, and guess who he matched up with? The Dallas Cowboys. Nick Chubb, the former Browns and Texans running back who's still sitting out there unsigned and looking for a new home. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you. This one caught me off guard because while Chubb is absolutely a name that gets your attention, I'm not sure Dallas is the right fit, and I'm definitely not sure Chubb is the right fit for what the Cowboys actually need right now. Let me read you what Bowen actually wrote in his piece because context matters here, and we need to understand exactly what the pitch is before we tear it apart or co-sign it. He said Chubb could provide value as the Cowboys' number 2 or number 3 option behind starter Rico Dowdle, and that Chubb can still secure catches on swings and checkdowns in the passing game, but should be viewed as an early down option who can use his power and vision in short yardage situations. He also pointed out that Chubb rushed for 520 yards in Houston last season, which honestly isn't terrible for a guy who was in a limited role, but it's also not exactly lighting the world on fire, right? So let's break this down piece by piece because there's a lot to unpack here, and I want to make sure we're looking at this from every angle: the salary cap, the roster construction, the locker room fit, and whether this actually moves the needle for a Cowboys team that's trying to get back to the playoffs and make some real noise. First question, does Nick Chubb actually slot in as the RB2 in Dallas right now? And here's where things get interesting because my answer is maybe, and that maybe should concern you if you're thinking about bringing in a veteran running back who's on the wrong side of 30. Let me tell you why I'm not convinced Chubb automatically jumps Malik Davis on the depth chart, and I know that might sound crazy to some of you because Chubb's name carries so much more weight, but hear me out. Malik Davis last season, on a smaller sample size, I'll admit, was actually more efficient than Chubb in several key areas. Davis averaged more yards per carry, he had more explosive runs, and when you dig into the advanced metrics, which we absolutely will in just a second, the numbers start to tell a story that maybe Nick Chubb in 2025 isn't the same guy we remember from 2022, and that's the crazy part nobody's really talking about. Back in 2022, Chubb was arguably the best pure runner in the entire NFL. Like, you could make a legitimate case he was the most dominant back in football when it came to just running the rock. The power, the vision, the balance, the ability to break tackles and then hit another gear in the open field. He had everything. But here's the reality. We haven't seen that version of Nick Chubb in about 3 years now, and the injuries have started to pile up in a way that you just can't ignore when you're talking about a running back who's already into his 30s. Now, let's get into the numbers because this is where it gets really interesting and honestly a little bit concerning if you're hoping Chubb is going to come in and be some kind of savior for the Cowboys' rushing attack. I'm looking at the advanced stats here, and these are the metrics that try to account for what the offensive line is giving you versus what you're doing on your own with your own talent and vision. Chubb's rush yards over expected last season were in the bottom half of the league. His yards after contact per carry was around 3.3, which ranked 23rd. His expected points added per carry was 39th, and here's the one that really jumps out: explosive runs. He was 45th out of only 48 eligible running backs. That's not good, folks. That's not what you want to see from a guy you're bringing in to be your number 2 or even number 3 option. And yes, I know the Texans' offense was a little bit feast or famine on the ground last year, so there's some context there. But even accounting for that, these numbers are not screaming sign this guy. Now compare that to Malik Davis, who again didn't qualify for the official rankings because his sample size was smaller. But when you plug in the numbers on a per carry basis, he was better in EPA per carry, he was better in success rate, and when you look at explosive runs on a rate basis, he actually had more juice than Chubb did. Does that mean Malik Davis is definitively better than Nick Chubb? No, I'm not ready to say that, but it does mean that the gap isn't as wide as you might think. And when you factor in age injury history and the fact that Davis brings legitimate special teams value, suddenly the decision becomes a lot less clear-cut. Let's talk about the short yardage argument because that's one of the main selling points in the ESPN article, right? That Chubb can still be that power back who gets you those tough yards on third and short or goal line situations. And look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you Chubb doesn't have power. He absolutely does. The man is built like a tank, and he's always been able to move piles and fall forward. But the results last season were honestly kind of meh when you compare them to what the Cowboys already have on the roster. On carries with 1 to 3 yards to go, Chubb had 22 22 attempts for 69 yards and 12 first downs, which gives you about a 55% conversion rate. That's decent. It's not bad, but it's also not blowing anyone away. Compare that to Rico Dowdle, who had a nearly identical first down conversion rate in those situations and actually scored 8 touchdowns in short yardage and goal line work last season. 8. That's real production right there. And then you've got Malik Davis, who on a smaller sample size, again, was converting at 50% and averaging over 5 yards per carry in those situations, partly because of one big run, but still the explosiveness is there. So if you're the Cowboys and you're looking at this, honestly, do you really need to bring in Nick Chubb to handle short yardage when Rico Dowdle just proved he can do it and do it well? I'm not seeing it. Here's the other thing that nobody seems to be talking about, and this is crucial when it comes to roster construction, especially at the running back position. If Nick Chubb is your RB3, he doesn't help you on special teams, and in today's NFL, that is a massive problem. We saw this exact situation play out last year with Deuce Vaughn, and even with some of the younger guys who were fighting for roster spots. If you're not contributing on special teams and you're the third running back, you're probably going to be inactive on game day. Chubb hasn't played special teams since 2018, which makes total sense. He's been a feature back for most of his career. Why would he be running down on kickoffs? But that also means if you're rostering him as your RB3, you're basically paying a guy to stand on the sideline in street clothes every Sunday unless there's an injury. That doesn't make sense for a team that's trying to maximize every roster spot, especially when you've got younger guys like Deuce Vaughn or even someone like a drafted rookie who could fill that role, give you special teams value, and potentially develop into something more down the line. If you're going to bring in Nick Chubb, it has to be as the clear-cut RB2, and he has to be a guy who's getting real touches every single game. Otherwise, what's the point? And here's where it gets tricky, because based on what we just went through with the stats and the efficiency numbers and the age and the injury history, I'm not even sure Chubb is clearly better than Malik Davis right now, let alone worth the investment when you factor in everything else. Let me ask you this, and I really want you to think about it. Would you rather give those RB2 reps to a 31-year-old running back who's coming off multiple knee injuries and just had one of the least explosive seasons of his career, or would you rather give those reps to Malik Davis, who's younger, who's shown he can be efficient, who brings special teams value, and who's already familiar with the offense? For me, it's not even that close. I'm rolling with Davis, and I'm keeping my options open to add youth and athleticism, either through the draft or maybe even a younger free agent if one shakes loose later in the summer. And that's not a shot at Nick Chubb. The dude has had an incredible career, and in his prime, he was an absolute monster, but football is a brutal business, and running back is the most brutal position of all. Father Time is undefeated, and when you stack up the miles, the injuries, and the advanced metrics, it's pretty clear that Chubb is on the back nine of his career. The Cowboys need to be thinking about building something sustainable, not bringing in a veteran who might give you 6 to 8 solid games before his body breaks down again. Now let's talk about the fit from a scheme perspective, because that matters too. The Cowboys under Mike McCarthy have shown that they want versatility out of their running backs. They want guys who can catch the ball out of the backfield, who can pass protect, and who can handle a variety of looks and personnel groupings. Rico Dowdle checked all those boxes last season. He was solid in pass protection. He caught the ball well enough, and he showed he could run between the tackles and bounce it outside when needed. Chubb at this stage of his career is much more of a one-dimensional player. He's a downhill runner who's best when you hand him the ball and let him get north and south. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's also not exactly what the Cowboys offense is built around, especially when you've got a quarterback like Dak Prescott who thrives when the run game keeps defenses honest in multiple ways. If you're going to add a running back this late in the offseason, he needs to be a chess piece, not just a hammer, and I'm not sure Chubb fits that description anymore. And the crazy part is I don't even think Chubb would want to come to Dallas in this kind of role. Think about it from his perspective. He's a guy who's been a bell cow back for most of his career. He's used to getting 20-plus touches a game and being the focal point of the offense. Do you really think he wants to come to Dallas to be a third down afterthought or a short yardage specialist who might get 5 or 6 carries a game if he's lucky? I doubt it. My guess is Chubb is waiting for a situation where either a team loses their starter to injury in training camp or a contender realizes they need veteran depth and can offer him a real role, not just a roster spot. Dallas doesn't check either of those boxes right now. Let me paint you the picture of what the Cowboys running back room looks like heading into camp and why I think they're actually in better shape than people realize. You've got Rico Dowdle, who just put together the best season of his career and showed he can handle a starter's workload. You've got Malik Davis, who's proven he can be a solid RB2 with special teams value. You've got Deuce Vaughn, who still has intriguing upside as a change of pace weapon, and you've potentially got a draft pick or undrafted free agent who could push for reps in camp. That's not a bad group, folks. Is it elite? No, but it's also not a disaster, and it's a group that has youth versatility and room to grow. Bringing in Nick Chubb doesn't really improve that room in any meaningful way unless you think he's clearly better than everyone on that list. And based on what we just went through, I don't think you can make that case with a straight face. The other thing to consider here is the money and the opportunity cost. Sure, Chubb isn't going to command a massive contract at this point, but even if you're talking about a veteran minimum deal that's still a roster spot, that's still cap space, and that's still reps in practice that could be going to someone with a longer shelf life, the Cowboys are in a weird spot right now where they're trying to win now, but they also need to be thinking about the future and how they're going to sustain success beyond just this season. Investing in a running back who's on the decline doesn't really help you do either of those things. Here's what I think the Cowboys should actually do at running back, and feel free to disagree with me in the comments. I want to hear what you guys think. I think you roll into camp with Rico Dowdle as your clear-cut RB1. You give Malik Davis every opportunity to solidify himself as the RB2. You keep Deuce Vaughn in the mix as your change of pace satellite back, and you bring in competition either through the draft or as an undrafted free agent to push everyone and create depth. If someone gets hurt in camp or if someone underperforms, then you reassess and maybe you make a call to a veteran like Chubb or someone else who's still available. But right now in May, when you're trying to build your roster and create competition and develop young players, it makes zero sense to bring in a 31-year-old running back who doesn't play special teams, who's coming off a down year, and who doesn't really fit what you're trying to do offensively. That's my take, and I'm sticking to it. Now, I know some of you are going to say, but he's Nick Chubb. He's a proven veteran. He's been to Pro Bowls. He's a dog, and I hear you. I really do. Chubb has been an incredible player, and if this were 2022 or even 2023, I'd probably be singing a different tune. But it's 2025, and we have to evaluate players based on what they are now, not what they used to be. And right now, Nick Chubb is a veteran running back on the wrong side of 30 with a ton of miles on his legs, a concerning injury history, and advanced metrics that suggest he's lost a step or two. That's just the reality. Let's also talk about the locker room angle for a second, because that's something that doesn't always show up in the stats, but it matters. Would Nick Chubb be a good veteran presence in the running back room? Absolutely. The guy is a pro, and by all accounts, a great teammate. But you know who else is a good veteran presence? Rico Dowdle, who's been with this team for years, who knows the system inside and out, and who just earned the respect of that locker room by stepping up and producing when his number was called. You don't need to bring in an outside veteran to provide leadership when you've already got it in-house. And if you're worried about the young guys needing someone to learn from, Rico can do that, Malik can do that, heck, even the running backs coach can do that. You don't need to sign Nick Chubb to teach Deuce Vaughn how to pass, protect. There are other ways to develop your young players. The more I think about this, the more it feels like one of those ESPN hypotheticals that sounds good on paper because of the name recognition, but falls apart when you actually dig into the details. Matt Bowen is a smart dude, and I respect his work, but I think he missed the mark on this one. The Cowboys don't need Nick Chubb, and honestly, Nick Chubb probably doesn't need the Cowboys either. This feels like a case of throwing a big name at a team with a perceived need and hoping it sticks. But when you actually look at the roster, the scheme, the financials, and the long-term plan, it just doesn't make sense for either side. So here's my final verdict on the Nick Chubb to Dallas rumor, and I want to be crystal clear about this. If the Cowboys were in a position where they didn't have Rico Dowdle, or if Malik Davis wasn't on the roster, or if they had just suffered a major injury in the backfield, then yeah, I could see the logic in kicking the tires on Chubb. But that's not where they are right now. They have a starting running back. They have depth. They have young guys with upside, and they have bigger needs to address on defense and along the offensive line. Bringing in Nick Chubb at this point would be a luxury signing that doesn't really move the needle and might actually clog up the roster and prevent younger players from getting the reps they need to develop. I'm passing on this one, and I think the Cowboys front office is going to pass on it too. Now, if we get to August and there's an injury or someone completely bombs in training camp, then maybe you revisit it. But right now, in the middle of the offseason, when you're trying to build your roster, the smart play is to stick with what you've got and let the young guys prove what they can do. That's how you build a sustainable winner, not by chasing big names who are past their prime. And look, I get it. Nick Chubb is a name that gets Cowboys fans excited because we've all seen what he can do when he's at his best, and there's always that hope that maybe you can catch lightning in a bottle and get one more great season out of a veteran. But hope is not a strategy, and in the NFL, you have to make decisions based on facts and probabilities, not nostalgia and name recognition. The facts tell us that Chubb is on the decline. The probabilities suggest that he's not going to suddenly turn back the clock at age 31, and the Cowboys already have better options on their roster who are younger, cheaper, and more versatile. It's really that simple. Before we wrap this up, I want to ask you guys a question, and I really want you to sound off in the comments because I'm curious where the fan base stands on this. Would you sign Nick Chubb, yes or no? And more importantly, why? What's your reasoning? Do you think he's still good enough to be the RB2? Do you think he'd push Malik Davis and make the room better? Or do you agree with me that it's just not the right fit at this stage of both their careers? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one, and I love hearing different perspectives because that's what makes this fun. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? We're putting out Cowboys content every single day, breaking down every move, every rumor, every angle, and we need you locked in. Hit that subscribe button, smash the notification bell, and let's keep growing this community because the more we grow, the better content we can bring you. All right, Cowboys Nation, here's the bottom line on this whole Nick Chubb situation. It's a fun idea. It makes for good headlines, and I'm sure it'll get people talking on sports radio and Twitter for the next few days. But when you actually break it down, when you look at the numbers, the fit, the roster construction, and the long-term plan, it just doesn't make sense. Dallas is better off rolling with Rico, Dowdle, and Malik Davis, developing their young guys and keeping their options open in case something changes down the line. Nick Chubb has been a heck of a player, and I have nothing but respect for what he's accomplished, but this isn't the right match, and the Cowboys need to keep their eyes on the bigger picture. Let me know what you think. Drop a comment with your take, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's keep this conversation going because we're just getting started with off-season coverage, and trust me, there's a lot more coming. This is your Cowboys Insider signing off, and I'll catch you on the next one.